I've been coming here for the past 30 years, and I'm pro-life because life is sacred, and America should value things that are sacred.
No matter how small a baby is, they still have a purpose.
The family is important. The family is the unit of society, and God wants us to love one another. Regardless of what suffering may come, abortion is never the option.
I'm here because life is important. That's our most basic foundational right. Nothing else matters in our country if there's not the beauty of human life, and that's what we celebrate today.
Children should have the right to live and live the life I'm living right now.
We're here to defend the lives of the unborn, the most vulnerable among us, those who are still living within their mother's wombs.
It's really important to me that the value of human life is preserved in American law as well as in American culture.
It's just inspirational to be here with all the other folks from around the country.
Hi, I'm Fr Michael Orsi. I'm your host for Action for Life Television, that good news program, the good news with the big G for the gospel of Jesus Christ, and the little g for all the good things that people are doing to make the gospel of life present in our society. Today, we have a very famous lady with us. Her name is Jeanne Mancini. It used to be Jeannie Monahan.
Yeah, good.
And I remember when she was Jeannie Monahan, only a little child at the time when I first met her. However, she is the lady who is in charge of the Great March for Life in Washington, D.C. March for Life, as you know, comes about every January to commemorate that unfortunate Roe v. Wade decision, which allows babies to be killed in the United States of America. Jeannie, could you tell us something about how did this March for Life get started?
Yeah, I'd love to. First of all, thank you, Father Orsi, so much for having me. It's just a blessing to see you again. And so how did it get started? Well, of course, 1973, the Supreme Court brought two very bad decisions down. One was Roe versus Wade and one was Doe versus Bolton. And they legalized abortion in the United States through all three trimesters. And so the following year, people that were pro-life wanted that anniversary to be marked. You know, they didn't want that to go unnoticed. And Nellie Gray, who was the founder of the March for Life, gathered a number of people in her townhouse in Capitol Hill the October before that, January 1974. And they made a plan to have the very first March for Life, which would be January 22nd, 1974. So that day, January 22nd, 1974, was the first March for Life. It was a little bit different than the marches now. For example, it was a warm day. It was 70 degrees.
Well, I wasn't there.
For you Floridians. I wasn't either. I was only one.
See, I told you. Right. I met her as a very young child.
But, well, historically, the March for Life is during the coldest week of the year in Washington, D.C., but it was like God tricked us that first year. It was nice and warm, and it was held at the Capitol instead of on the grounds of the National Mall. There were a couple thousand people who came out, mostly adults. So that's how it all started. And frankly, Nellie thought it would, really end there the next year because nobody anticipated that those laws would remain for so long because, of course, Father Orsi, they were decisions of judicial activism outside of what the Supreme Court is called to do. They're called to interpret the Constitution, not create laws outside of the Constitution, but that's really what happened with those decisions. And even Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Justice Ginsburg, has said that they were decisions of judicial activism. So everybody thought they'd get corrected. They didn't think that the march would go on more than a year or two. Here we are 47 years later, going into 2020 for our 47th March for Life. And where it's sad, horrifically sad to consider that we've lost 61 million Americans to abortion in that time. The flip side is that the March for Life has become the largest annual civil rights demonstration around the world.
How many people
positive.
show up? How many people show up for the march?
At least over 100,000.
Not according to CNN fake news.
True.
A couple of hundred people are there.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, right.
And look, folks,
Absolutely.
I've been there. This is huge. It's humongous, the number of people that show up over there, young, old, and sometimes people think, hey, this is just like a Catholic thing, right?
Right.
It ain't, folks. There's people from every walk of life. You know, you don't have to be a person of faith to recognize that there is a child in the womb, especially now that we have the sonogram.
Yeah.
Holy Moses. I get pictures of the babies. You know, they're just like, how old can you see the baby?
Oh, 6 weeks now.
6
it's
weeks.
Amazing.
6
yeah,
weeks.
you can hear a heartbeat at that stage. That's when the heart starts. So, yeah, in fact, Father, our theme last year in 2019 was pro-life is pro-science, unique from day one, and we focused very much on how we don't need to approach this from a religious perspective because biologists can tell us when life begins at the moment of conception. So absolutely, this year for the 2020 March for Life, our theme is Life Empowers, Pro-Life is Pro-Woman. And that is in large part because, well, two things. One is that it's an election year and we're gonna hear a lot of confusing and conflicting messages about what it means to be pro-woman. But to be pro-woman is pro-life. No
Isn't
question.
that the truth?
No
I mean,
question.
You have the other side talking about they are pro-woman, and therefore you have to be in favor of abortion.
And nothing could be further from the truth. Women deserve so much better than abortion. And I think St. Mother Teresa of Calcutta said it best when she said, abortion is profoundly anti-woman. All of the mothers and half of the babies are impacted by this terrible decision. So,
You know what? When I think about Mother Teresa, when she would meet people who are pro-abortion or giving a talk how awful abortion is, certainly for the baby and for the mother too, Mother Teresa would say, if you don't want the baby, give it to me.
I'll take the baby.
Yeah.
That's what she would say.
That's what she would say. And you know, Jeanne, you know as well as I do, there are many, many people who would love to have those babies.
Yes, thank you, Father. Thank you for mentioning that. In the United States, we have only 20,000 infant adoptions every year versus over 800,000 abortions. Like, what can we do to bridge that gap is really the question. Why can't we help a mother who's facing an unexpected pregnancy to choose adoption, which is a beautiful and noble decision?
Well, Jeannie, you are now the big guru of the March for Life, all right? And you're going to be out there talking about, you know, how important it is that women be respected.
Yes.
Okay? Now, what are you going to do in a special way this year? You know, you want to get the message across. And, you know, thank God we have some politicians in big places who are really pro-life. So could you tell us what are your plans to get the message out there?
Yeah, so I mentioned our theme is Life Empowers, Pro-Life is Pro-Woman, and part of that is because it's the 100th anniversary of a woman's right to vote, the 19th Amendment, this year, 2020. So we are going to do things like highlight different suffragists. By the way, all of the suffragists were pro-life. Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Susan B. Anthony, they all knew that to be pro-woman was to be pro-life, to respect life in the womb. So we're going to highlight a lot of those stories and early civil rights activists. We're going to showcase a lot of amazing pro-women at the March for Life, pro-life and pro-women activists at the March for Life itself, and we'll continue to just counter the confusing and conflicting messages about what it means to be pro-woman all year long with the truth and the attractiveness of the inherent dignity of women.
Okay, now, this is, folks, this is just between us. You've had some interest from the White House.
We have. And I cannot say enough good things about how this administration has supported the pro-life issues and specifically the March for Life. I mean, before President Trump won in November of 2016, we'd already been in touch with his vice presidential candidate at that point, asking him to speak at the March for Life. And we were delighted and blown away when less than a week after their inauguration, the Vice President of the United States, for the first time ever in the history of the March for Life, came and spoke at the March for Life. Wow. And it wasn't his first time, it was like his 10th or 11th time coming, but it's so important to him, and he reminds us that every time, you know, we see him. So the White House has been actively involved every single March for Life since 2017, more than ever before. I mean, prior to that time, the highest level official that we'd ever had come in person was a White House Domestic Policy Council staffer, essentially. So it's really beautiful to see how courageously this administration leads into it.
What about the president? Hasn't he addressed the march?
In 2018, the president wanted to be involved, and so from the Rose Garden, which I found symbolically very, very meaningful, because the logo of the March for Life has always been the rose, which is reflective of life. So from the Rose Garden, which is less than a mile away from where the marchers were, the president addressed the marchers via satellite, and he could hear us chanting, less than a mile away. And that particular year, the president, the vice president, and then the Speaker of the House in person at the march all spoke. So if you think about it, politically, the three most powerful men in the world addressed the marchers. It was beautiful.
I am so pleased with the president and his administration, especially that they're so supportive of pro-life, but also that they wanted to fund Planned Parenthood.
Yes. Yes, they do, which is amazing. In fact, just this morning before we came over here, we passed by a Planned Parenthood where a local parish prays, I think almost every day, but certainly the woman that we were with shared that the Knights of Malta pray a rosary there every Monday morning. And it's right across the street from a pregnancy center that offers free resources for women and men facing an unexpected pregnancy.
Oh, yes. I've been there. It's on Goodlet Frank Road and Creech. And I am happy to tell you that we have miracles. We have rescues, people that leave Planned Parenthood, go right across the street, and get the important information that they need. One case in particular, we just prayed and prayed and prayed a few weeks ago. Man came out, left, came back. We told him, please get a picture of the ultrasound. Went in,
Beautiful.
Looked at the picture, came out with his girlfriend, and said, "Me, Papa," and showed me the picture, and we directed them right across the street to get the help that they need. So,
so beautiful.
We're in a battle for life, and we need all the support that we can get. And Jeannie needs support for the march.
Thank you,
And
Father.
are you going to tell us how people can support you? Of course, we're going to pray for you.
Yeah.
All right, but talk is cheap. Beer costs money. All right. What else can they do?
Yeah. Honestly, the March for Life in many ways has operated on a wing and a prayer for many years, and we're now moving in a direction that's a little bit more strategic in terms of development, and thanks be to God for that. But anyone who would like to support our work, and we'd be most grateful for that, can know that their support could be trusted. I mean, we really try to do everything that we can with our donors, financial support and partnerships. So they could check us out at marchforlife.org. We also have a lovely young woman, Katrina Gallick, who sometimes comes down to Florida and would be happy to meet one-on-one with anyone who's interested in hearing a little bit more about our programs. I am blessed, as I said, to run the March for Life. I've been there since 2012. I would like to see by show of hands, how many of you here have been to the March for Life? Oh my goodness, great. Okay, wonderful. Well, consider yourself invited again, personally invited. And for those of you who haven't been, consider yourself especially personally invited, because the March for Life is a life-changing experience to go and to be part of it. It's like to be there, and I think especially to see the witness of the young people in hordes. I mean, it's like en masse. There are literally over 100,000 participants in the March for Life each year, and they are largely under the age of 25. And if you're ever feeling a little bit sad or that things might be a little bit dark in our culture, the March for Life just buoys our spirits, and you feel so confident that we can pass the baton to the youth who call themselves the pro-life generation. So just a bit of history. So the reason that we March for Life, of course, and many of you could probably recite this more than me, but it's because we had two very bad Supreme Court decisions that were made in 1973. They were Roe versus Wade and Doe versus Bolton. And both of those Supreme Court decisions that came out on the same day, January 22nd, 1973, allowed abortion through all three trimesters in all of the states in the United States. And they were very much considered decisions of what we say judicial activism, in other words, outside of the parameters of what the Supreme Court is called to do, which is to interpret the Constitution, not to legislate from the bench. And even Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg has admitted that they were decisions of judicial activism. And so these bad decisions came out, and the following fall, seeing that sadly probably a full year was going to go and these decisions were not going to be corrected, a number of people gathered in the townhouse of Nellie Gray, who's the founder or the foundress of the March for Life. She lived in Capitol Hill. She was single. She was an attorney. She worked for the government. She was really an it girl in so many ways. I mean, Nellie had this feisty personality and she was amazing. And Nellie retired from her career with the federal government after a little while because she realized that this was going to take up a lot of her time, this fight to end abortion. And never did she anticipate when they began that first march, which was very different for any of you who've been to the March for Life. Historically, that week, that third week in January, is the coldest and most bitter week of the year with the wind chill. I mean, and so I think I kid around and I say God tricked the first marchers because the very first march was like 70 degrees in Washington, D.C., so they didn't know what they were getting into. But so that very first march happened, and there were about 2,000 people there, primarily adults, many legislators. And you know, I think they thought maybe a year, maybe 2 years we'll be doing this, and then these decisions that were so horrific will be corrected. They never thought here, 47 years later, that we'd still be having this conversation.
As you can imagine, producing this wonderful program, Action for Life, it costs a great deal of money. We're going to need your help. So if you would like to donate to keep this good news program on the air, please go to your computer, your cell phone, actionforlife.net. Thought for the day. A lot of people think that the religion is only for the next world. Well, it's very much for this world too. It has an impact on our daily lives. Make sure that you take time to know the candidates who are running for office and then to vote for those candidates who are pro-life. We have a lovely young lady with us today. Her name is Erica. And I met Erica on the sidewalk outside of Planned Parenthood. She comes almost every week to pray against abortion. Erica, could you tell us why you come out to Planned Parenthood?
It's just something very important for me. I was given up for adoption when I was a baby, and throughout my whole life, knowing that my biological mom chose life for me, it's just very important in my heart to pray for the babies that maybe aren't given that option. And it's something I like to do, and maybe we could change one girl's mind along the way.
You know, you're out there on the sidewalk, you're praying, you're holding up signs sometimes, choose life, whatever the case may be. What's your experience out there? You know, what do people say to you? What do the cars do as they pass by?
I think some people, you know, aren't so happy we're out there. You know, they're doing a lot of provocative things. But I mean, a lot of people, they honk, they wave, they wave their hands out, they say, yeah, pro-life, and you know, and then some people even driving in stop and maybe listen a couple seconds to hear what we want to say or take a little pamphlet we hand them, and other people just go right in real quick. So it depends on the person, but some people are pretty receptive to what we're doing.
What about, you know, people your age, your friends? Do you ever talk to them about what you do and what you believe?
I do. No, I know maybe one or two people that agree with me. It's a huge majority of young people nowadays are just so focused on, oh, this is a woman's choice to do what she wants, and who cares what anyone else says? She's going to make horrible decisions against an innocent child. And they really don't listen. They don't really receive it very well, but some people do agree.
Okay, now how do you approach them? What do you say? You're talking to them, you're having a conversation, and you're saying, hey, look, I'm pro-life. I go out and I pray in front of Planned Parenthood, and you know, I think abortion is wrong. And then they say, how come? How do you get into a conversation like that?
Well, I think I definitely wait for someone else to maybe bring it up, like, oh, well, you know, I support Planned Parenthood, and I'll say, well, really, why? And I'll just act like, you know, maybe I'm not sure, and I kind of pretend like, well, why? And I hear what they say, and I just say, well, I mean, if you think killing a baby is helping anyone, I mean, can you at least, do you have any justification for that? No, of course they don't. They don't even care about the facts. They don't care about when the heart starts beating. They just don't care. They just say, well, I'm not sure any of that works, but I think I have the right to do with what my body is whatever I want. And, I try to explain that the baby's heart starts beating at, within the first couple weeks. It's just, and they, every life is valuable. And they listen, but I don't think it changes their mind that much.
Well,
It's
maybe
hard.
sometimes you plant a seed,
Yeah.
You plant those seeds.
And then they go home, they think about it, and they say,
Right.
well, wait a second, what did Erica say? Maybe it's...
Right, yeah.
Maybe it is a
That's so
viable life.
important. We do need young people who are interested in the pro-life movement, and Erica is one example. And, I can say a lot of things sometimes to a lot of people, and they say, oh, he's just an old priest. But they see a nice young girl like you out there and you talk to them, it makes a big difference. So I hope that more young people will get involved in the pro-life movement. And earlier today we had on Jeanne Monahan, I beg your pardon, Mancini now, and we talked about the March for Life in Washington. And Erica is on the board of Action for Life, and maybe you'll be in Washington in January.
Maybe. I've gone to the March for Life 2 or 3 times.
Wonderful.
So hopefully I could go again this January, but it's absolutely amazing.
I hope so.
It's a lot of young people coming out. It's awesome to see it.
It really is. Thank you so much. God bless you. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Hi, this handsome gentleman sitting next to me, his name is Jerry, and Jerry is one of those folks that prays on a regular basis outside of Planned Parenthood. And Jerry, can you tell us why you do this?
Well, I have 5 children, and it always made me feel that it's so important that life continues, and that this abortion always reminds me of what happened in Germany. This is a bigger disaster than that was. And that's why I go out there. Now that I'm no longer working, I have more time to do it. I started back in 1993 and to Chain for Life on 41, and going to Planned Parenthood when they were on 41 there. And so this now I go every day. I go on Mondays and Wednesdays in the morning time. So,
well, you know what? I presume that you should never presume anything. But I thought that Jerry was a Catholic, and I was talking to him, and he says, "No, I'm not." And I just want you to know something, that pro-life is not just a Catholic thing.
That's
there
true.
are many
Very true.
people who are involved in the pro-life movement. Many of the wonderful Protestant churches are out there, 40 Days for Life, and we work together. So, Jerry, could you tell us about, okay, you're not a Catholic, and yet, you're right there, on the sidewalk in an ecumenical sense. It's just beautiful to me.
And I also come to St. Agnes.
That's for me, though. You just come to see me.
Oh, yeah, of course. My daughter up in Tampa, they belong to a church up there, and they go to Planned Parenthood up there, or whatever the abortion clinic up there, and they spend a lot of time. I had them on the sidewalk when they were very young, down 41, on October, Chain for
Life
Life.
Change Sunday,
Yeah.
sure.
And so now they continue the thing. The young group up there are wonderful kids. They are very dedicated to Christ. And that's what this is all about, isn't it, Father?
It sure is. And you've been at it a long time. You've raised your family to be a pro-life family. And the good that you've done passes on from generation to generation. And I, again, reiterate, pro-life is an ecumenical movement. People with common sense, they know that we're dealing with a human being, and that every human being has a right to life. Jerry, I want to thank you for being with us today, and I hope that those of you who have been watching today's show, especially those of you who perhaps have never gone to the March for Life or have never supported the March for Life, will look on your internet and find March for Life and somehow contribute either prayer, maybe financially, to this great movement that takes place in Washington every January.
And so our theme last year was pro-life is pro-science, unique from day one. And that little fingerprint that you saw was supposed to represent how there's no two fingerprints that are the same, and that we have our DNA from the moment of conception, for our whole life, and that tells us what color our hair is, if we don't get it highlighted, that is, and our eyes, and all these different things. So this year, the theme for the March for Life, which we just debuted, I guess 2 or 3 weeks ago, is very exciting. I'll give a little bit of backdrop that 2020 marks the centennial of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution, which allowed women the right to vote. So it's the 100th anniversary of women's right to vote in the United States this year in 2020. And so our theme is Life Empowers, Pro-Life is Pro-Woman. And we plan on really educating about how the early suffragists were pro-life. They knew that to be pro-life meant to love the inherent dignity of the unborn as well, and that it not only did a disservice to the baby to not choose life, but to the mom as well and the dad. And we also know, because it's an election year, that there will be a lot of confusing and conflicting messages about what it means to be pro-woman. And so with this theme, we can really emphasize again and again and again throughout the year that to be pro-woman is to be pro-life.
We cannot know what our citizens, yet unborn, will achieve, the dreams they will imagine, the masterpieces they will create, the discoveries they will make. But we know this: every life brings love into this world. Every child brings joy to a family. Every person is worth protecting. And above all, we know that every human soul is divine, and every human life, born and unborn, is made in the holy image of Almighty God.
We would like to thank our generous sponsors for their wonderful support. Thanks for watching. Please join us next time for Action for Life. I'm for action, and I hope you are too. I'm Fr Michael Orsi. I am your host for Action for Life Television, that good news program which talks about the gospel of Jesus Christ, the big G and the little g, all the good things that people are doing to put the gospel of life into action. So please join us for the next episode of Action for Life.